Okay, so now let's move into the cloud, and you can do that at firebase.google.com. Now, while we are going to be using Google Cloud, the reason I'm starting with Firebase is that when you create a Firebase project, which I'm going to do by heading over to the console over here in top right, when we create a project, it's also going to create a Google Cloud project for us automatically. We could do it in the reverse order as well. You could create a Google Cloud project and then I think like add a Firebase project to that. But it's a bit easier, I think, to just start with Firebase from the start, even though we aren't actually going to be using any Firebase services just yet. So I'm going to enter a project name, YouTube clone, and it looks like it's going to generate that with like a little unique ID for us. That's going to be important because we're going to be using it throughout the project. And I'm going to scroll down and go ahead and accept the terms and just, confirm all of that. They give us a quick overview of some of the services. Well, it looks like just analytics. And in my case, I'm not going to enable this because I'm not really going to deploy this after this course. So I don't really care about Google Analytics. But if you want some analytics, you can feel free to enable that. So now I'm going to create the project. And while that's creating, I'm going to actually quickly show you that Google Cloud has a pretty good free tier, and pretty much everything that applies to Google Cloud also applies to Firebase. So Firebase also has a pretty good free tier. We get basically $300 of free credits, which you can use for the first 90 days after you create a project, assuming you've never used Google Cloud before. And not only the $300 credit, but you can see that most of the services, including most of the ones that we're going to be using, if you scroll down, like Cloud Run, gives you a lot of free invocations per month, like 2 million requests, this much CPU time, this much network egress. So basically what I'm getting at is you should not have to spend a penny, assuming you've never used Google Cloud before. And even if you haven't, the services we're going to be using are probably going to cost you like a few bucks at most. So like even in your $300 credit, we're only going to be using like a small fraction of that. And heading back over to Firebase, it looks like our project is created. So I'm going to step into that. And here you can see we are currently on the free plan and we can upgrade if we want to. I think we don't have to yet, but we might have to in a bit. Now I'm actually going to head over to the Google Cloud console. And just to show you, I'm going to go to Google Cloud and then I'm going to click console at the top right. And we're going to get this sort of welcome screen. You can see the email that I'm using. Basically, I'm using a throwaway account. You can put in your country, you can agree to the terms of service, and then we're good. Now, if you go over here, select a project, you would expect that maybe we don't have anything, but actually the Firebase project, like I said, is created here as well. So we're going to select this project, even though we're not going to do anything, but take note that this is the project name. This is the project ID. We're going to be needing this. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy and paste it. But again, you can always find it. It's always going to be here. So I'm going to click that and then scroll down here and then click open. So now we are within that project and we don't have any like resources created for us, but we probably will. We're going to be needing Cloud Run, so I'm actually going to leave that pinned, and we're going to be needing cloud storage, but we're not going to be needing BigQuery, nor are we going to need a VPC or SQL or Kubernetes in our case. And I'm going to get rid of Marketplace as well, and I guess I will get rid of APIs and services as well, and also security and Google Maps. Now, if you want to see the entire list of resources, you can click the more products, and it's quite a long list. Don't worry, I'll kind of try to guide you through the ones that we're actually going to be needing. Now, most of the steps I'm going to show you next could be done through the UI, and I'll be showing some of those as well, but primarily we're going to be doing things through the command line because it's a bit more reproducible, and you can pretty much just copy and paste the commands exactly the way I'm doing them. Before you can do that, you have to actually install the Google Cloud CLI tool, which you can kind of follow the instructions here. I will link this below. I won't kind of show you myself installing it because it's going to depend on your operating system. I'm not going to show you every single way, and the steps are already documented here. So it's best to refer to the docs in this case, depending on your operating system of choice. In my case, I'm using Ubuntu. So I was able to just do it through like the command line. But once you have that installed, you can confirm by running gcloud-v. That will kind of give you all the information. In our case, we're going to be using gsutil and gcloud. Basically, you should have all of this installed pretty much. Now, we want to take our Docker image and push it to Google Cloud. That's going to take a few steps. One, we are going to have to enable a service called the Artifact Registry. So it's kind of hard to read this, but again, this command will be available to you below. It's going to be .googleapis.com. So this is the service we're enabling, and let me quickly show it to you in the UI. So heading back to the Google Cloud UI, I'm going to search for the Artifact Registry. This is where we can push our Docker images. And when I navigate to it, you see you have to first enable this service before we can use it. You can do that through the UI. I'm going to do it through the command line. So So I'm just going to enter this command. And actually, before I even show you that, I probably should have showed you this, a gcloud auth login. You're going to want to log in with your Google credentials for the account that you use to create the project. So this is what you're going to want to do. It should give you a long URL like this, which you can then click or copy and paste. And then in the UI, you should be able to authenticate with your Google account pretty easily. Great. So now we have authenticated, and then we can run this command, gcloud config set project, and we're going to grab the project ID from earlier and just copy and paste it, which is this. And then running that, we have set up the project. And just to confirm that we're at the right project, we can use this command, gcloud config get value project, and yep, we're at the correct project. Awesome. So now we can use that command from earlier, which is enabling artifact registry. I'm going to run it. And it looks like we got a billing error. So that basically tells us we do have to add a billing account. And I assume we would get the same error if we try to enable it here. And maybe this will actually take us to billing. Okay, so we have to enable billing first. So I guess it's better to do it through the UI in this case. So go ahead and enable that. And before we can enable billing, I guess we have to create a billing account. So I'll go ahead and do that as well. Now you can probably just follow the prompts that it gives you and just enter your credit card information. So I won't go through all of these steps in detail. Okay, so I went ahead and added my credit card info and started the free trial. I'm pretty sure in my case, it won't be free because I've already used Google Cloud before, but that's okay. Now I'm just going to rerun the command from the command line and make sure that things are working properly from the CLI. It's taking a second. And it looks like it completed successfully. So now let's get back to Google Cloud and refresh this page and see what we get. We might actually have to update the URL as well, just to make sure we're not just hard coding ourselves into the enable page. Yeah, it looks like we have enabled the artifact registry. And once you do that, you can navigate there, I guess, through the search bar. And if you would like to, you can basically do all the steps I'm going to show you in just a second via the UI, but I'm going to show you how to do it via the CLI. And that's because if you want to get good at the command line, you got to put in the work. So this might be an optional command. I think it was necessary for me the first time I did this, which is gcloud components update. And that is before we actually create the artifact repo. So next we're going to create that repo, just like I said. This is going to be to contain our Docker images. So gcloud artifacts repositories create, and we're going to call this the video processing repo. And I'm going to add a slash so that we can specify a few flags. One is going to be the repository format, which is Docker in our case. There's many different options, and you would be able to see that through the UI. And next, we're going to specify the location, which in my case, I'm just going to do US Central for pretty much all of these, US Central 1. You could pick whatever location you want. I will say that some might be cheaper than others, so that might be something worth looking into. I think the US ones are all pretty cheap though. And also we can add a description. I'll keep it short, Docker repo for video processing service. And I think that's pretty much it. So let's run this and see if it works. Interesting. So I'm pretty sure this error is actually not our fault. I did some research on Stack Overflow and I saw other people get this error. They were able to resolve it with the gcloud components update command. So I'm not sure why I'm not able to resolve it, but no matter. Let's go ahead and just do the same thing through the UI. So we already kind of know what we're doing here. We're going to create a repo, in our case, Docker. We're going to call it video processing service. It's going to be standard. It's going to be regional. I think that is going to be cheaper than multi-regional. And we're going to keep things US Central 1. Description. It's a Docker repo. We're not going to add any labels and we're just going to use the default options here. And we're going to create that repo now. It might take a few seconds, but afterwards we are done. I'm going to minimize this left menu over here and we're going to click on the repo. It's going to be empty right now, of course, but we're going to push our Docker image here. So let me show you how to do that via the CLI. So we want to build a Docker image. We actually want to rebuild the Docker image that we already built earlier, but this time we're going to give it a different name. It's going to be named like this, US Central 1 Docker package dev / our project ID, which in my case is this, but yours of course is going to be different. And then the name of this service processing repo, or actually this is the name of the repo that we're pushing to within artifact registry within this project. And the actual name of the Docker image is just going to be video processing service. And after that, I'm going to add a dot because in this directory is where our Docker file is. So the reason we're building it with this convention is because this way, when we push our Docker image, Docker knows that we are pushing to artifact registry. So first, let me go ahead and run this command. It's pretty quick because a lot of the steps were already cached from earlier. So I'm going to clear the screen again. And now you might be wondering, well, if we run docker push, how does Docker know that we're authenticated? Like, how does this CLI tool know? Because we never authenticated with Docker. We authenticated with gcloud. Well, that's a good question. And that's the reason we can't automatically push and why we need to run this command, gcloud auth configure Docker with the region that we specified earlier. So you can run this command, and then after that, we should be able to push the Docker image. And that is done. I don't think I've shown you yet, is done with Docker push, and we're going to specify the image name, which you could just get with Docker images. Yep, so this is the tag, so I guess we can just copy and paste that instead of typing it all out. I'm gonna copy that, yoink, and then I'm gonna say Docker push, copy and pasted the big name, and I think that's pretty much it, just Docker push, and we don't have to specify the repo because this name is pretty much telling us where we are pushing this image. So I'll run that. Okay, I unfortunately had a typo when I was creating the repo, really sorry about that. So this is what I assumed I called the repo, but when you head back over to Google Cloud, we see that the repo's name is actually ending with service. I wonder if we can actually edit the name. Oh, it looks like we can't, so we'll have to recreate a repo. The good thing is it's pretty easy to do. So I'll quickly do that now off screen, but you can just refer to the previous steps because it is, again, pretty easy. And now I'm going to go ahead and rerun this command. And you can see it is working. It's copying the blobs to artifact registry. And this step actually might take a couple minutes. Now we have to wait for this to complete before we can push our image to Cloud Run, but there is another step I can show you while this is running. And that is the simple step of enabling Cloud Run. And you can do that with this command, but again, you can also do that through the UI. So I'll navigate to Cloud Run within the UI and you'll see that initially it's not enabled, or actually it looks like it kind of is. That's strange, but I'm going to go ahead and run this command just in case. I know that some Google Cloud services will automatically enable just by opening them, but I don't think it probably hurts to run this command and make sure we don't get like any errors or anything like that. And it looks like it completed successfully. So after pushing your image, you can create a Google Cloud Run service over here in the UI. I'll also, of course, give you the equivalent gcloud command in the article below, but I guess I'll just show you how to do it through the UI. Now, I'm not going to select the container image because it's actually still pushing. I got kind of tired of waiting around, but our service name is going to be Video Processing Service, and it's going to be in the same region, US Central 1, just for convenience. And there's like a couple of CPU options you can select. We're going to pick the cheaper one. It's only allocated during request processing time. Now, of course, if we were deploying this, we might want like a dedicated CPU, but we're trying to just do this in a very cheap way, which brings us to the auto scaling. Our number of minimum instances is going to be 0, and the maximum number of instances is going to be 1, just to kind of keep the cost low for you guys. This should still be enough to like test it out, of course. Basically what this means is if our service is not getting any requests, like it's idle for like a few minutes, it will auto scale down to 0, which means we won't be billed for the resources. Now, if we start getting a lot more requests, it will auto scale up to 1. And if we get too many requests to handle, it won't continue auto scaling. So you might want to add like 100 maximum instances, or I guess we can't go above 10 in this case. But hopefully you get the idea. Down here to ingress control, this is going to be very important from a security perspective. We do not want this service to be public. We don't want anyone to be able to use our video processing service. Only we want to be able to use it. So I'm going to set the ingress control to internal. That means only internal Google Cloud services can use this video processing service. And that's going to be perfectly fine for us because we're going to invoke this with Cloud Pub Sub, as we're going to see in a bit. Now, as an additional layer of security, you might want to actually require some level of authentication. In my case, I'm not going to do that. You might want to check this box, but I'm not going to do that because it just takes a bit more setup. And I don't think that's something you guys would be interested in. And it doesn't really matter a ton in this case. The main reason you'd want to require authentication is because having ingress control to internal, it restricts only internal services to call our Cloud Run service. But for us to be able to say, well, we only want PubSub to be able to invoke it, not like some other internal service that we deployed, that's why you would want to enable authentication for. But in our case, again, I'm not going to do that. So before I create this service, we should probably select the container image. That's kind of the important part. Hopefully it has been deployed. So let's select, and this will actually take you to either the artifact registry or container registry. In our case, we're using artifact because container registry has been deprecated. You can see there's the repo that we created. So we're going to expand that. And this is the service. And this service will have a history of all of the Docker images that we deployed. And this is the latest one because we only pushed a single one. So I'm going to select that one and open it up. I also encourage you to explore what the UI looks like in the artifact registry now that we've actually pushed a container. It's nothing special, so I won't cover it in depth. Now we are ready to go ahead and create this service. Exciting. Hopefully there's no errors or anything like that. And it looks like it's provisioning our resources, which should just take a couple minutes. And now that it's completed deploying, you can see in our list of services, it does appear. When you click on it, it will take you to the UI. There's quite a lot going on here, so I will save that for a future video. Don't worry, we'll cover most of this stuff, at least the important stuff, in depth. But most importantly, you can see that the URL for this service is here. Now, if we try to open it, first of all, we don't really have a root endpoint defined in our service anyway, but if we try to open this, you can see we get a not found error, and that's what we would expect. So I will leave things there, but we have a little bit more setup to do in the cloud.